The night sky was filled with fire when Daniel's ship fell through the clouds. The alarms had already been screaming for minutes, and the flames outside the window told him he was no longer in control. His small escape pod spun in circles, metal groaning as it tore apart against the atmosphere of the alien world below. Daniel held the straps tight, forcing himself to breathe. Stay calm. Just stay alive. That was all he could tell himself. He was a soldier, trained to handle fear. But crashing on an unknown planet was not in his mission. The pod slammed into the ground with a terrible force. The impact shook his bones, throwing dust and leaves into the air. For a few seconds, Daniel couldn't move. His ears rang, and his body felt heavy. But he had survived. That was the first miracle of the night. When the smoke cleared, Daniel pushed open the hatch. The air was warm and heavy with strange scents, sweet like flowers but sharp like burned wood. The forest around him glowed faintly, trees rising tall with shining leaves that seemed to carry their own light. He staggered out of the wreckage, coughing, scanning the horizon. His communicator was broken. No way to call for help. He was alone, or so he thought. As he moved deeper into the glowing forest, he heard voices high, musical tones that echoed strangely. Then came the sound of struggle, shouts, clashing metal, and a scream. Daniel froze. His training told him to stay hidden, but something stronger pushed him forward. He ran toward the sound. Through the trees, he found a clearing. There, a group of tall, armored figures surrounded a young woman. She wore silver robes, torn and stained, her crown tilted as she tried to defend herself with a dagger. But the attackers were too many. Their weapons gleamed, and their eyes burned with hate. Daniel's heart raced. He didn't know who she was, didn't know the politics of this world, but he knew one thing: she was about to die. And he could not let that happen. He grabbed a piece of sharp metal from the crash site earlier, a broken rod from his pod. It wasn't much, but it was a weapon. With a shout, Daniel charged into the fight. The armored rebels turned in surprise, not expecting a human. He struck the first across the helmet, sending him sprawling. Another came at him with a blade, and Daniel ducked, ramming the rod into the attacker's side. The young woman gasped as the chaos gave her a chance to step back. Her bright, glowing eyes fixed on Daniel, as if trying to understand what kind of creature had come to her rescue. But the battle wasn't easy. Daniel was strong, but there were too many. A rebel slashed his arm, and blood ran down his sleeve. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to keep fighting. The girl stumbled, one of the rebels striking her down. She fell to the ground, clutching her side as dark alien blood stained her robes. "No," Daniel shouted, pushing through. He struck another rebel, then another, until the rest turned and fled into the forest. Their voices fading, silence returned to the clearing, broken only by the woman's weak breaths. Daniel dropped to his knees beside her. Her face was pale, her crown slipping from her head. Her wound was deep, and her strange blue blood poured fast. He tore a piece of his shirt, pressing it against her wound, but she was fading too quickly. Her lips moved, speaking in a language he couldn't understand, yet her eyes begged him not to let go. Daniel's mind raced. She needed blood, too much had been lost. Human blood might be poison to her, but doing nothing would mean her death. His training told him never to take such risks, but his heart told him otherwise. "I don't know if this will work," he whispered, pulling out a small emergency injector from his belt. He drew some of his own blood, biting his lip as he pressed it into her arm. For a moment, nothing happened. The girl's eyes fluttered shut, her breathing shallow. Daniel feared he had only doomed her faster. But then, slowly, her chest rose stronger. The glow in her skin returned, faint but steady. Her wound stopped bleeding as quickly. Her eyes opened again, meeting his. This time, her lips curved in a weak smile. She touched his arm with trembling fingers, as if to thank him. Before slipping into unconsciousness, Daniel sat back, exhausted. His arm throbbed from his own cut, and his body was drained from the blood he had given. But she was alive. He had saved her, at least for now. The forest was still. Yet Daniel knew danger hadn't ended. The attackers could return. He needed to move her, but she was light in his arms, fragile like a child. He carried her carefully, searching for safety. Soon, voices and lights approached from deeper in the woods. He stopped, lowering her gently. Armored soldiers emerged, different from the rebels, taller, more disciplined, carrying banners of silver and gold. Their eyes went wide when they saw the girl in his arms. "Princess Lyra," one of them shouted. They rushed forward, surrounding Daniel, weapons pointed at his chest. Daniel froze. Weitai saved her. She was attacked. But they didn't listen. Strong hands pulled him back, wrenching the princess from his hold. She was placed onto a litter, healers rushing to check her condition. The leader of the soldiers glared at Daniel. "Human, what have you done?" Daniel tried to speak, but his voice was hoarse. "She was dying. I gave her my blood. It saved her." The soldiers exchanged looks, disbelief and anger in their faces. The healer touched the princess's arm, then looked up with wide eyes. "It is true. Her body carries his blood now. She lives because of him." The leader's expression darkened. He barked an order. In seconds, Daniel's arms were bound behind him with glowing chains. "Wait." Daniel struggled. "I'm not your enemy. I helped her." But his words fell on deaf ears. The soldiers lifted him, dragging him through the forest. Ahead, a great city of shining towers rose against the night sky. Glowing like a crown above the land, Daniel's heart sank as he looked back at the unconscious princess, carried away with care. He had saved her life with his own blood. But now he was a prisoner, and somewhere in that great city, her mother the queen waited. The glowing chains tightened around Daniel's wrists as the alien soldiers dragged him toward the shining city. His boots scraped against the stone path, his body aching from the crash, from the fight, and from the blood he had given to save the princess. He wanted to shout, to explain himself. But every time he opened his mouth, the soldiers pulled harder. Silencing him with cold eyes, the forest opened to reveal a bridge that stretched over a wide river glowing with silver light. Beyond it stood the Capitol towers rising like blades, walls carved with symbols that shone in the night. The city seemed alive, its buildings pulsing faintly, as though they were grown rather than built. Daniel had never seen anything like it. The soldiers marched him through the gates, past crowds of tall aliens who stopped to stare. Their faces showed shock and suspicion when they saw the strange human bound in chains. Some whispered in their melodic language, while others drew back, clutching their children. Daniel could feel their fear. To them, he wasn't a rescuer, he was an intruder. At the heart of the city stood the palace, vast and shimmering, with crystal spires that touched the clouds. The gates opened, and Daniel was pulled inside. The halls were wide and lined with guards in silver armor. He was taken to a grand chamber where a tall figure stood upon a throne of light. It was the queen. Her presence filled the room before she even spoke. She wore flowing robes of deep violet, her crown shaped like rising flames. Her eyes were sharp, glowing like stars, and her voice carried both strength and sorrow. At her side, healers worked to tend the unconscious Princess Lyra, who now rested on a golden bed. The queen's gaze fell upon Daniel. Silence stretched through the hall until she finally spoke. "You are the human who touched my daughter." Her voice was calm, but every word carried weight. Daniel swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet her eyes. She was dying. Rebels attacked her. I fought them off. She lost too much blood. I gave her mine. It saved her life. Murmurs rose among the gathered nobles and guards. Some gasped, others frowned in disbelief. The queen lifted her hand and silence returned. "Our healers tell me this is true," she said slowly. "That my daughter now lives because your blood flows in her veins." Daniel nodded, though his chains made him feel small before her throne. "Yes, I don't know why it worked, but it did." The queen's eyes narrowed, as if searching for lies. Then her tone hardened. "And why would you do this, human? What is your purpose here? You fall from the sky, appear in our forests, and the first act we witness is you binding yourself to the heir of my throne. Do you think I will believe it was chance?" Daniel shook his head quickly. "I didn't come here by choice. My ship was attacked. I crashed. I don't even know where I am, or who your people are. When I found her, I only knew she was in danger. I couldn't just walk away." The queen studied him for a long time. Her expression gave nothing away. At last, she rose from her throne, descending the steps with slow, graceful movements. She circled him like a hawk watching prey. "My daughter is the future of this empire," she said coldly. "Her life is bound to mine and to our people. If she dies, the throne fractures. And now," she paused, her eyes sharp as blades, "her life is bound to yours." Daniel felt the truth of her words deep in his bones. He remembered the way his own blood seemed to burn when he gave it to the princess. The strange connection that sparked when her eyes had opened again. He was no doctor, but he understood what the queen meant. Their lives were now tied together. He tried to speak carefully. "I didn't mean for that to happen. But if my blood can help her, then maybe it was fate." The queen's eyes flashed at the word fate. "Do not speak of fate in this hall. Human, you are no chosen savior. You are a stranger who carries my daughter's life in your veins." Gasps filled the hall at her words. The nobles whispered fiercely now, debating what should be done. Some said he should be killed before his bond became a danger. Others argued that killing him would kill the princess too. Daniel stood in silence, his heart pounding. He had risked his life to save her, and now he was treated like a criminal. But he could not show weakness. He lifted his head, his voice steady. "I don't want power. I don't want your throne. I only want to live, and I will not harm her. You have my word." The queen's gaze lingered on him. For a moment, her hard mask faltered, and a flicker of something worry or perhaps gratitude crossed her face. But then it was gone. "You will remain here," she declared. "Not as a free man, but as a guest under guard. Until I know your true nature, you will not leave these walls." Daniel's jaw tightened. A guest under guard was nothing but a prisoner in finer words. Still, he had no choice. He nodded slowly. "As you command." The queen returned to her throne. "Take him to the east wing. Keep watch. If his bond weakens, or if he harms her in any way, I will end his life myself." The guards pulled him away. As they led him through the palace corridors, Daniel looked back one last time at the princess, lying on the golden bed. She was still pale, still weak, but her chest rose and fell with steady breaths. He wondered if she knew the price he was already paying for saving her life. The chamber doors closed, and the queen sat alone with her thoughts. She looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully, and whispered words no one else could hear. "You live, my child." But at what cost? Daniel's new chamber was nothing like a prison cell. It was a tall room with high windows, glowing walls, and a bed softer than any he had known. Food was brought to him on silver trays, and guards stood outside the door day and night. He was treated with respect, yet the chains of suspicion still bound him. He paced the room, his mind heavy. He thought of Earth, of his fallen ship, of his lost crew. He thought of the princess, her face when she had looked at him, weak but grateful. And he thought of the queen, whose sharp words cut deeper than any blade. Days passed. Daniel began to notice something strange. Whenever the princess's condition shifted, when she weakened or grew stronger, he felt it. His own body reacted, his strength rising and falling like a shadow of hers. The bond was real. Their lives were tied, and he knew the queen was right about one thing. He could never walk away from this now. Daniel's chains were gone for the moment, but he still felt trapped. The palace corridors were wide and gleaming, yet every step reminded him that he was not free. Guards followed silently, their expressions unreadable, while Daniel's mind raced with questions. He had saved Princess Lyra, yes, but now? He was a stranger in a world filled with customs, dangers, and powerful people who might see him as more threat than hero. The palace itself was magnificent. A city within walls, with towers that shimmered like crystals and corridors lined with glowing symbols. Daniel had never seen anything like it on Earth. Even in the army, he had faced alien tech before, but nothing compared to this. Every detail of the place reminded him of how far from home he was, and how close to danger, in the grand hall. Daniel was led before a group of nobles. They were tall, graceful, and carried an air of power that pressed down on him. He noticed their eyes flicking to Lyra, who followed behind, now awake and alert. "You saved her," one of the nobles said, his voice calm but suspicious. "Yet you are human. You are unknown to us. How do we know your motives are pure?" Daniel straightened. "I don't know your customs, your rules, or even your language perfectly, but I know this. I saved her life. That is all I wanted. I will not harm her or any of you who protect her." Another noble, taller and older, shook his head. "Her life is tied to our empire. One human cannot be allowed to influence it. Even if he saved her, he may still bring ruin." Lyra stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "He saved me. And if you question his intentions, look at what he risked. His blood flows in my veins. He is part of me now. You cannot deny that." The hall went silent. Daniel felt the weight of her words. They were stronger than any defense he could make. The nobles whispered among themselves, some skeptical, some visibly impressed. One of the younger nobles, curious and cautious, leaned forward. "If he is bonded to the princess, as you claim, then his life is tied to hers. But what of the bond? How do we know it is safe? How do we know he will not betray us or her?" Daniel clenched his fists. "Because I would die before I let anything happen to her. You can see it in my actions. You saw me fight for her. You saw me take blows meant for her. There is no betrayal here." Queen, seated silently at the head of the hall, raised a hand. All voices hushed, her gaze fixed on Daniel. "You have done what no human has done before. You have risked your life for the princess." And yet her voice was steady, almost icy. "Risking her life is not the same as loyalty. You must understand this. Trust is earned, not given. And I will watch every moment until I am certain." Daniel nodded. "I understand. I only ask that you let my actions speak, not my race or my origin." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Very well. You will remain here. Not as a guest, not as a servant, but under observation. Until I know your heart, your skill, and your loyalty, you will not leave these walls." Daniel felt a weight settle in his chest. He had expected gratitude, or at least relief that Lyra was alive. Instead, he was to be watched every moment, like a prisoner in a gilded cage. Yet he understood her caution. The palace, the empire, the princess, these were treasures of untold value. Protecting them was no small matter. Days passed. Daniel learned the palace's routines, its customs, and the subtle ways of its inhabitants. Every noble he met was a test of patience and diplomacy. Some treated him with curiosity, others with open suspicion. He noticed whispers following him through corridors, and always eyes watching, judging. Lyra visited him when she could. Her visits were brief but full of quiet conversations. They spoke of her people, of the history of the empire, and of the rebellion that threatened it. Daniel told her stories of Earth, of cities and oceans, of sunlight and storms. She listened, fascinated, occasionally laughing softly at the odd customs of his world. One evening, Daniel sensed it before he heard it. Movement in the corridors, hurried footsteps not belonging to the guards. Lyra's body tensed beside him. "The rebels," he whispered. She nodded. "I fear so. They are bold. More than we imagined. Some wish to see the throne crumble entirely." Before more could be said, a distant alarm sounded a warning bell that echoed through the palace. Soldiers rushed past the doors, their weapons drawn. Daniel instinctively followed, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Through the halls, he discovered the first signs of intrusion. Rebel forces had found a way into the outer courtyard, and the palace guards were engaged in fierce battle. The air smelled of smoke and energy, and sparks flew from damaged walls. Daniel moved alongside Lyra, covering her when a stray bolt of energy streaked past. His heart pounded not just from fear, but from the bond. When she was threatened, his body reacted instinctively. When she braced, his strength returned. The Queen appeared at the top of a staircase, her presence commanding. "Protect her," she ordered the guards. Her eyes then met Daniel's. "And you. You are to guard her as well. The bond will guide you both. Do not fail." Daniel nodded, though the weight of responsibility pressed down. Every step, every choice mattered. He felt the bond flare in his veins, a warning and a strength combined. If Lyra was harmed, he would suffer. If he fell, she would fall. The thought was frightening, yet it gave him clarity. The rebels advanced further into the palace, and Daniel met them head-on. Using both skill and instinct, he deflected attacks, guided by the bond that linked him to the princess. Each swing, each strike, was fueled not just by survival, but by the connection he shared with her. Lyra moved beside him, agile and quick, her eyes bright. "Daniel, watch your left!" she shouted, and he dodged just in time, narrowly avoiding a deadly strike. After the first wave, the rebels retreated. But their presence left the palace tense and vulnerable. The queen convened her council, the nobles arguing about security, loyalty, and the unusual bond between human and princess. Daniel remained at Lyra's side. He noticed her trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the strain of the bond. Every heartbeat, every breath she took, seemed mirrored in his own body. He could feel her exhaustion, her relief, and her courage. "You carry more than just my life," Lyra whispered. "You carry part of my soul." Daniel looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "Then we are both stronger for it. Together, we face what comes." The queen observed silently, her expression unreadable. She was both grateful and wary, recognizing the truth of the bond, but unsure how it would affect the empire in the long run. She understood now that Daniel's presence was not a mere accident. He was part of their future, whether they wished it or not. By nightfall, the palace had quieted, though the tension lingered like a shadow. Daniel returned to his chamber, Lyra by his side. They sat together in silence, each lost in thought. The bond hummed softly between them, a reminder of what they had survived and what dangers still lay ahead. Daniel realized that while he was bound by duty and observation, the true chain was the bond itself. It was invisible, but unbreakable. And it connected him to someone he had never met before, the Crasha. Human and alien bound in ways that neither fully understood, he understood one truth clearly: he could never leave her side. And in that realization, he found both fear and purpose. The palace was quieter at night, but Daniel never felt peace inside its walls. His room was beautiful, yet the guards at his door reminded him every moment that he was not free. Days had turned into weeks since the queen had declared him bound to the princess. And though he ate well and slept in comfort, he carried chains made of suspicion. But something stronger than those chains was pulling at him, the bond. He had felt it again and again. When Princess Lyra's health faltered, he grew weak, his body heavy as if he carried her wounds. When she grew stronger, warmth filled his chest, his steps lighter. It was not just in his mind. It was real. He was tied to her in a way no one could fully explain. One evening, as the moonlight spilled across his chamber, the door creaked open. Daniel turned, expecting guards, but it was her. Princess Lyra. She wore a simple gown, her crown absent, her steps soft as if she was sneaking past her watchers. Her face was pale, but no longer fragile, and her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You should not be here," Daniel whispered. Though part of him was grateful to see her, she closed the door behind her, her voice low but steady. "If my mother knew, she would forbid it. But I could not stay away. I needed to see you." Daniel frowned. "Why?" "Because I owe you my life," she said softly. "The healers told me everything. They said I should not be alive. But you gave me your blood." She hesitated, her gaze searching his. "And now I feel different, stronger, but also tied to you." Daniel exhaled slowly. "I feel it too. When you are weak, I feel it. When you are strong, I feel that too. It is like carrying a part of you." Lyra nodded, stepping closer. "Then it is true. We are bound." They sat together in the quiet chamber. Daniel told her about his world, about Earth, its oceans and forests, its wars and hopes. She listened with wide eyes, as if hearing tales from another universe. In return, she told him of her people, of the empire her mother ruled, of the rebels who wanted to end the royal line. Why do they want you dead? Daniel asked. Because the throne holds power older than our history, she explained. The queen is not just a ruler. Her blood is sacred. It carries the light that binds our people together. If she falls, and if I fall, the empire fractures. The rebels believe a new order should rise from the ruins.
Oh.
Daniel was silent for a moment. Then saving you put me right in the center of this fight. Yes, she whispered, and I am sorry for that. He shook his head. Don't be. I could not walk away. Before more could be said, a faint noise reached his ears, a distant shout, the sound of hurried feet. Lyra stiffened. The guards, she began, but Daniel's instincts sharpened. No. These were not the steady steps of watchful soldiers. These were urgent, chaotic. The door burst open, and one of Daniel's guards stumbled in, blood on his armor. Rebels in the palace. He gasped before collapsing. Daniel leapt to his feet. Lyra's face turned pale. Outside the chamber, alarms rose, and the glow of the palace walls shifted to red, pulsing like a heartbeat without thinking. Daniel grabbed the fallen guard's weapon and turned to Lyra. Stay behind me. The rebels came quickly. They wore dark armor, their eyes burning with the same fury he had seen in the forest that night. They rushed into the chamber, blades raised. Daniel moved with the training of a soldier. He struck one down with the blunt of the weapon, blocked another's swing, and pushed Lyra toward the corner. But more poured in. One blade slashed across his chest, and he staggered, blood spilling. At that same moment, Lyra cried out, clutching her side as if she too had been struck. The bond surged, his pain was hers. Daniel gritted his teeth. If I fall, she falls, he realized. That was why the rebels were smiling, pressing harder. But Daniel refused to give in. He swung again, pushing them back even as his body ached. Run! He shouted to Lyra. No! She cried, her eyes bright with tears. If you die, I die too. Her words seemed to burn through the chamber. Even the rebels froze for a heartbeat, realizing the truth. The princess and the human were tied in life and death. That pause gave Daniel the chance he needed. With a desperate cry, he rammed the weapon into the floor, releasing a burst of light from its crystal edge. The rebels shielded their eyes, and palace guards stormed in behind them. A brutal clash filled the room, and the rebels were cut down or driven away. When silence finally returned, Daniel sank to his knees, gasping. Blood stained his shirt and his vision blurred. He felt himself slipping, but gentle hands caught him. Lyra knelt beside him, her face pale but fierce. Stay with me, she begged. Do not leave me. Daniel forced a weak smile. Not going anywhere. The guards lifted him, rushing him to the healers. Lyra followed, refusing to leave his side. Hours later, Daniel awoke in the healer's chamber. Strange light circled above him, mending his wounds. He felt weak, but alive. At his side, Lyra sat silently, watching him. When he opened his eyes, she spoke softly. You saved me again, and my mother knows it now. She cannot deny what you are. Daniel frowned. And what am I? Lyra looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope. Bound, not by choice, not by law, but by blood itself. Moments later, the queen entered. Her eyes were hard, but there was no anger in them this time, only a heavy weight. You risked your life again for her, she said slowly, and you proved what I feared most. Her life and yours are one. If you die, she dies. If she is harmed, you suffer. God. Daniel pushed himself up weakly. Then you understand. I cannot leave, and neither can she escape me. The queen's jaw tightened. For the first time, her voice trembled faintly. You have tied yourself to my daughter in a way no bond of this world has ever seen. And because of that, you are no longer just a prisoner. Daniel held her gaze waiting. The queen continued. You are her shield. Her chains. Her fate? She turned away, her robes sweeping the floor. But do not think this is freedom, human. You belong to her now. And to me, Her words rang in the chamber long after she left. Daniel looked at Lyra. She reached for his hand, her touch soft but steady. "We will find a way through this," she whispered. Together, Daniel closed his eyes. He did not know what the future held, but he knew this. He was bound by blood, by duty, by something deeper than either of them could yet understand. The palace had never felt so tense. The air was thick with urgency and fear. News had spread of a massive rebel attack, one larger than before, targeting not just the princess, but the queen herself. Daniel stood in the east wing, chains removed from movement, but still bound by duty. His heart beat fast, not just for himself, but for Lyra. The bond they shared pulsed in his veins like a second heartbeat. Princess Lyra appeared at the door, her silver robes shimmering faintly in the dim light. She had never looked more determined. "They are coming," she said. "We must protect the queen." Daniel nodded. "Then let's not waste time." He grabbed a weapon from the armory, a long, sleek blade designed for alien hands, but manageable for his own. It hummed faintly, responding to the user's touch, and he felt its energy surge through him. Together, they moved through the palace corridors. Daniel could feel every movement of Lyra's body in his own. When she faltered, his legs grew weak. When she braced, his strength surged. Their bond, once a mystery, had become a weapon and a warning. The first wave of rebels struck at the main gate. The palace walls shook as explosions and blasts lit the night sky. Daniel and Lyra reached the throne room just in time. Through the tall crystal doors, they could see the rebels clashing with palace guards. The queen stood at her throne, calm but guarded, her eyes scanning every movement. Daniel stepped forward. "Stay close," he whispered to Lyra. She nodded, gripping his arm, her gaze filled with trust and fear. The doors burst open as a group of rebels charged inside. Daniel moved with precision, blocking one strike after another. Lyra followed, using her agility to avoid attacks and guide Daniel when his strength faltered. Together, they became a blur of motion, human and princess. Bond unbreakable, blood ties linking their lives. One rebel lunged at Lyra, blade aimed for her chest. In that instant, Daniel felt a sharp pain in his own side, her fear and danger translating directly into his body. Without thinking, he dove in front of her, taking the blow himself. The world blurred as he hit the floor, gasping. Lyra screamed, tears welling in her eyes as she pressed her hands against his chest. "Daniel." "No." But he shook his head weakly. "I'm fine, you must protect." Lyra's voice faltered. "I can't do this alone." "You won't be alone," he whispered, pushing through the pain. "We are. Together?" "That," she nodded, understanding the truth of their connection. Her eyes glowed brighter than before. The bond flared, a surge of energy that seemed to push the rebels back. Daniel rose to his feet, every wound still aching, but his strength renewed by the connection. He fought harder than ever, every swing of his blade fueled by the desire to keep her alive. The queen watched silently, a mix of awe and fear crossing her face. She had seen warriors before, but never one so bound to her daughter, so willing to sacrifice himself without hesitation. The battle raged. Explosions shook the palace, crystal walls cracking under the rebels' assault. Yet Daniel and Lyra moved as one, striking, defending, and surviving through sheer determination. Their bond became a shield and a sword, human courage fused with alien resilience. Finally, the last of the rebels fell, retreating in disarray. The throne room was littered with the aftermath, scorched floors, broken crystal, and the lingering smell of alien energy. Daniel sank to his knees, exhaustion overwhelming him. Lyra rushed to his side, supporting him as he leaned against the crystal wall. "Did it?" she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "We survived." Daniel looked at her, his chest still burning from his wounds. "We survived. Because we are tied, bound by blood, and by choice." The queen stepped forward, her robes flowing like liquid light. She looked at Daniel, her face unreadable. "You have proven yourself beyond any doubt," she said slowly. not only have you saved my daughter, but you have defended the throne itself. Your courage, your bond, it is unlike anything I have ever seen." Daniel bowed his head, though his body trembled from pain. "I only did what I had to do." The queen's eyes softened, though her voice remained firm, and yet human. "Because of your actions, your blood, your courage, you can never leave. The bond is unbreakable. You are part of this empire now. You belong to my daughter, and by extension to the throne." Daniel swallowed hard. He had expected gratitude, perhaps even freedom, but never this declaration. Still, he had come to understand the truth. His fate was entwined with the princess. He was her shield, her protector, and a part of her life. Lyra stepped forward, placing her hand on his. "I choose you," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of both gratitude and command. "Not because of duty, but because I trust you. We are bound in ways that cannot be broken, and I will not let you be alone in this act." Daniel felt a warmth wash through him. It was not relief, not freedom, but something deeper, acceptance. He realized that while he could not leave, he had gained something far more powerful than liberty, a bond of trust, respect, and shared purpose. The queen nodded slowly. "Then it is settled. You are bound to her. You will remain here, not as a prisoner, but as a guardian. You will live with her, fight with her, and protect her. That is your fate, human, and you must accept it." Daniel looked at her, then at Lyra, then finally around the throne room, seeing the empire in a new light. He had arrived as a stranger, a human out of place and out of time. He had risked everything to save a life not his own. And now, he was part of something greater than himself, a story that would be told across worlds, a bond that would never fade. "Yes," he said finally, his voice steady. "I accept." The queen's eyes lingered on him, a faint smile touching her lips. "Then may your courage continue to guide us all, and may the bond you share with my daughter remain unbroken, no matter the storms to come." Daniel felt Lyra squeeze his hand. "We faced them together," she said, and for the first time he believed it. Outside, the first light of dawn spilled across the city, turning the crystal towers golden. The battle was over, but the journey was just beginning. Daniel and Lyra stood side by side, human and alien, bound by blood, courage, and trust. Together, they faced a future neither could predict, but one they would face as one. For Daniel, the life he had known was gone. Yet, in its place, something stronger had emerged. He had saved a princess with his own blood, and in doing so had become something more than a man. He was a protector, a guardian, and part of a bond that would last a lifetime. And as he looked at the queen, standing proud but watching her daughter with care, he understood the truth of his fate. He was bound. Bound by duty. Bound by courage. Bound by love. And he would not falter.